with only so many hours in the day, it's the first and easiest thing to sacrifice is sleep.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to sell somebody on how it's going to impact your long-term health, what could be coming down the road 5, 10, 20 years from now in terms of chronic illness, disease, etc. And so if somebody feels like, hey, I'm getting by fine on 5 or 6 hours of sleep, I'm doing my thing and I don't need it, it's really hard to try to get them to see that no, in fact, you do need it. And it's going to catch up to you.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become their favorite versions of themselves and to strive for overall health by healing their relationship to food and exercise, healing their relationship to their body, and most importantly, healing their relationship to themselves, all without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who have been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time someone shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. So, welcome to the Unveiling the Beast podcast. Thank you for saying
Thank you.
yes. And can you tell me and the listeners a little bit about who you are and why you think you are who you are?
Oh, sure. So I am I guess my title is sleep and wellness coach. Um, and so I've been health coaching for probably about 4 years now. Beyond that, I am a wife, mom of 2 college kids. So we are newly empty nesters, which is kind of crazy. Um, and we live in Massachusetts. And crazy, it's November, but it is 70 degrees right now. Kind of insane. Um,
Wow.
yeah. And this whole health coaching journey is my second chapter, so to speak. So it's my first time being an entrepreneur, which is exciting and scary and
Okay.
lots of feels with that. But I am really excited to build my practice and just show my kids, like, hey, look what you can do.
I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah. How new is it? Can I ask?
Yeah. So I started studying to become a health coach right at the beginning, January 2020, right before it all, hit the
Exploded.
fan.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. But I was still working and I had a job that I was working. And so I was kind of doing it on the side and then officially stopped that job, I guess about a year and a half ago to jump in both feet into building my practice and trying to make it happen.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
So, my question for you would be how or what made you decide to focus on sleep?
Good question. So initially, I wasn't sure what I wanted to focus on or who I wanted to help with my health coaching. I have a couple autoimmune diseases myself. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll focus on autoimmunity. And I did actually become certified in the autoimmune protocol. But I also was fascinated by gut health and brain health. And I was constantly going down rabbit holes. But what I realized, a common denominator across all of those various areas was the importance of sleep. And so I knew that it didn't matter who I was working with or what we were going to work on, we were going to have to start with sleep because it's so foundational to our health. And if you're not sleeping properly, you can't thrive in health. So I thought, all right, then let's do it.
Yeah. That that piece is near and dear to me because I had chronic sleep deprivation for like 6 years, where I was averaging like 5 to 6 hours a night, yeah, not enough sleep. And so, um, when I finally started getting sleep, and I'm still working on quality of sleep. The quantity I've nailed, I think, but the quality still needs some work. But when I started getting more sleep, I noticed that I wasn't distracted by exhaustion anymore.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, it really is when you, and a lot of people don't necessarily realize that they're not getting enough sleep. But then when you do and you are able to increase it, it makes everything else run smoother, right? Everything else
yeah.
just a little bit easier.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this hustle culture of I'm good, I gotta go, 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 and I'm good with 4 hours and yeah, what are your
Oh.
thoughts on that?
Oh boy. So that's yeah, that I'll sleep when I'm dead. Yeah, all that. It's that's what I'm working up against. That is the script that I am trying to flip. And I'm hoping to make people realize that sleep is actually an investment.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for instance, I work with entrepreneurs or business owners, et cetera. It's an investment not only in your business, but in relationships, in your mental health, in your physical health, both day to day and long term physical health. The tricky part is that another side to this hustle, go, go, go culture is, we are a culture of, what we want things to happen right away.
Yeah.
So, and it's with only so many hours in the day, it's the first and easiest thing to sacrifice is sleep.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to sell somebody on how it's going to impact your long-term health, what could be coming down the road 5, 10, 20 years from now in terms of chronic illness, disease, etc. And so if somebody feels like, hey, I'm getting by fine on 5 or 6 hours of sleep, I'm doing my thing and I don't need it, it's really hard to try to get them to see that no, in fact, you do need it and it's going to catch up to you. So that's the struggle that I have right now
Mm,
because there's certainly the group of people who, like yourself, you understood that you were struggling with sleep. And so you were willing and ready to make changes to try to figure that out.
yeah.
And so those folks are great. They'll raise their hand and say, yeah, I need help here. It's that other group of people who don't realize what they're actually doing to themselves and to their bodies.
Hmm. So I had two questions brewing in my head, and I wasn't sure which one to ask first. But with that being said, what are some of the signs that you are lacking enough sleep or quality sleep? And is it different for everyone?
Yeah, again, that's the tough part is that it can be different for everyone.
Mm,
And so, some obvious ones would be obviously feeling tired or exhaustion or lethargy, brain fog, that kind of stuff. But it could be weight gain. It could be food cravings, like sugary, starchy foods, things like that. Um, Increased stress or inability to handle relatively minor stressors, right? Everything's compounded. It could be issues in relationships, lack of sleep. It impairs our complex emotional processing. And so it can definitely impact how we interact with other people. and our relationships. So but people they don't know what they don't know. So they don't know that to attribute any of those things to lack of sleep,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but it can impact us in so many ways.
Mm. Then my second question would be if you could give like a brief sleep 101 class to the listeners. Would you be able to?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. Like a brief, like, these are the things that it does. Here's the benefits. And if you want to, you can even go into like what happens in our brains when we're asleep. However you want to do it.
Sure. So I can start by giving a few examples of how lack of sleep can affect our health. And so I mentioned gaining weight. So if you're trying to lose weight, if say that's one of your health goals, but you're not getting proper sleep, our bodies don't release fat when we're not getting our proper sleep. But it's compounded by the fact that lack of sleep also messes with our hormones that regulate our appetite. So ghrelin, that makes us feel hungry, that shoots up. Leptin, that gives us that full satisfied feeling, that takes a dive. So we end up eating more because we're more hungry more often. And it tends to be sugary, starchy calories because lack of sleep you tend to crave that type of food.
Mm.
So our bodies aren't releasing fat and we're eating a bunch more sugary, starchy calories, right? That's not a winning combination for weight
Right.
loss. Um, the next example, this is personal for me. And I know that a lot of families have been touched by Alzheimer's, dementia. So the lymphatic system in the body, main responsibility is to flush out toxins from the body. And there's a similar system in the brain called the glymphatic system. That primary responsibility is to flush out toxins that build up during the day. And one of those that can build up is beta amyloid, which is associated with Alzheimer's. The thing is, the glymphatic system only works when we're sleeping.
Mm.
So if we're not properly sleeping and it can't do its job and flush out those toxins, then you're going to get that buildup of not just beta amyloid, but other proteins and detritus and stuff also in the brain. And then this last one is, I guess, more for the men in your audience. Um, Men who sleep just 5 hours or fewer a night have significantly smaller testicles than those who sleep 7 or more. And
Interesting. Say
yes.
more.
Yeah. I know I joke. I'm like, that gives new meaning to grow a pair, right?
Yeah.
But testosterone is a critical hormone for things like focus, drive, motivation, and not just in men, in women also.
Mhm.
And if you think about it, it's the repercussions on reproductive health. And women also take a similar hit on their reproductive health, lack of sleep. So if you're trying to start or expand your family, sleep is really important. So those are just a few ways that lack of sleep can impact our health. And they're all, as I mentioned, there are also a number of long-term health issues that can happen, chronic illnesses, disease, even cancer, cardiovascular disease, just the list goes on and on.
Mm.
In terms of just day-to-day processing of information or how it might affect our, say, work or running a business or something. When we take in information during the day, it's stored in one part of our brain, or short-term information. And when we sleep at night, that's when our brain has the opportunity to kind of synthesize that information. It moves it into a different part of the brain where it stores for long term so that we're able to access that information at a later time. And so it helps us really connect the dots on things and help us with our memory. So if you're not getting sleep, your brain's not clearing out that short-term memory depository. And so you're not really, you won't be necessarily able to recall all of that information at a later date. And also it makes it harder the next day to take in more information because it's kind of like, well, it's full, it's overflowing.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
got nowhere to put that information. And our REM sleep, rapid eye movement, which most people associate with dreaming, that stage of sleep is really cool. And some of the benefits from having healthy REM sleep is it helps with our creativity, our problem solving, our also with that emotional processing piece of it. So if you're not sleeping long enough, you're shortchanging yourself on those types of benefits. So there are, if you want, I can go into how I tell people ways to try to at least positively shift our sleep a little bit.
Yeah,
Sometimes you have,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, sometimes you have to dig deeper, but there are some fundamental things that everybody can put into place to help at least move the needle a little bit.
That is my next question, but I want to pause really quickly and going back to short-term memory, like how it stores during the day, and then when you sleep, it goes into long-term memory. My listeners know I have a 7-year-old, and so therefore I watch all the Disney movies. And if you haven't seen the movie Inside Out, this is not an ad. Disney doesn't pay me to say this. If you haven't seen Inside Out, go watch that movie. You don't have to watch the second one, just go watch Inside Out because it does an amazing job of illustrating not just our emotions in our bodies, but also when the main character goes to sleep, all of her short-term memories get kicked over to long-term. Like, it's so good. So even if you don't have kids, go watch the movie.
I got to check it out.
That's the end of my rant. But yeah, so what would be some of these, like if you had a golden sheet that you could give out to people that says, here's how you can improve your sleep, what would those things say?
There are three main buckets that I talk about. Sleep environment, so the actual physical space in which we sleep. So for most of us, the bedroom. Sleep routine, so what we're doing during the day and right before bedtime to prime our bodies for restorative sleep. And then sleep story, what's going on up here in your head that can get in the way. And I think the easiest one to start with is sleep environment because for most of us, it's just making changes once and then to different aspects of our environment. And then you should be all set, kind of set it and forget it. So I'll give you a few examples of how you can optimize your sleep environment. Two primary clues to our body that it's time to rest and sleep, or that help to regulate our sleep-wake cycles, are light and temperature. So light, which I'll also talk more about in a minute when we talk about routine, we want our sleep space to ideally be as dark as possible, pitch black. Even little sneaky sources of light can interrupt our melatonin production, which can disrupt our sleep. So whether that's the light from a cable box or sneaking in from outside, any type of gadget that you might have in your room. And if you can't remove the gadget or position it in such a way that the light is not facing you or bothering you, stick a piece of tape over it. The caveat to that is if you have to get up during the night, say to use the bathroom, we want everyone to be safe and not bumping into things.
That would be
So maybe a strategically placed night light, but just make sure it's red or amber tinted. That will be less disruptive to your sleep. And don't start turning on the lights in the hallway and the lights in the bathroom, because then that's going to make you alert and awake. So maybe another night light out in the hall or something, so that you keep it dim so that you don't disrupt your sleep. In terms of temperature, our core body temperature naturally dips in the evening. And again, that's a signal to our body that it's time to rest and go to sleep. So we want to keep our ambient room temperature low as well. So anywhere between 60, 68, how low you go is kind of personal preference. We really don't want to go higher than 68 degrees, because then if it starts to impact your core body temperature and raise your core body temperature, that's going to wake you up and disrupt your sleep. And then, obviously keep your space quiet, or maybe with some white noise. Make sure your bedding is comfortable and inviting. Uh, if you have to have your phone with you in the room, then maybe put it on airplane mode so you're not getting notifications during the night, and it minimizes the electromagnetic frequencies. Some people are very sensitive to EMFs. So if you can keep it either powered off or on airplane mode, that's ideal. I know some people have to physically have it out of the room. It's too much of a temptation for them, or they just don't like it to be in the bedroom with them. So those are my suggestions for our sleep environment. In terms of sleep routine, Kate, do you have a sleep routine that you follow?
Kind of. Um, I when you were talking about noise, immediately what I thought of is the first thing that helped me start getting sleep is a sleep meditation that's on my Fitbit app. And there's so many different options on there, but I always stick with the same one because that one just knocks me out. And so that's part of, if I were to say I had a routine, and my son calls her, he goes, "Can you put the lady on?" And I also recently just recorded my own sleep meditation to put on my channel, but I haven't finished all the edits yet. But it was so impactful for me that yeah, and I know that's not what you asked, but that would be the thing that sticks out in my routine. I am working on not scrolling right before I go to sleep, because I think that impacts the quality, as we were talking about earlier. But I do have like a nighttime routine that's not necessarily all targeted at my sleep. Does that answer your question? Like, I have a night routine, but it's not like it's not all focused on sleep. I think it's because I have a 7-year-old, and kids are very unpredictable sometimes.
Oh yeah. And typically when you're able to follow your routine, what time does that usually start?
About 7 or 7:30. Because our goal is to be in bed at 8, because we have very early days, so we go to bed early.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I'll get varied answers for that, of what time people's bedtime routines start, anywhere from, like you, 7 all the way up till someone told me their routine starts at midnight. But our routine actually starts right when we wake up in the morning. So there is a saying I love: how well we rise is how well we rest. So what we do first thing in the morning can absolutely impact how we sleep that night. So one thing I recommend for folks is to try to get outside into natural light first thing. Which, I mean, you mentioned that you're really early risers, so it might not be light yet when you're getting up, and as we're coming into winter now, that can be challenging for some folks. But to get outside into natural light, don't pick your phone up right away. Because if you do happen to have your phone next to you, and that's the first thing you look at when you open your eyes, that's going to spike your cortisol, which is a stress response, and we don't want that. But getting outside into the natural light allows us a nice, gentle, gradual rise in cortisol. So cortisol can get a bad rap if it's consistently elevated. We don't want that because that's stress, that's the fight or flight sympathetic state that we don't want.
Right.
But we definitely it's the hormone that wakes us up in the morning, makes us feel alert, and there are other times when we need a spike of cortisol during the day, but hopefully our body is able to then self-regulate and lower that after we no longer need it. But by getting outside and we get that nice gradual increase, and then it kind of sets the clock to our body to know that, okay, so many hours from now, we're going to start decreasing cortisol and increasing melatonin and get ready to rest. So that's my first suggestion for routine. If we're able to get outside at sunset, the light spectrum at that time of day with its nights reds and ambers and such is a signal to our body that, okay, we're going to start to unwind soon and we're going to start producing melatonin and get ready to rest and sleep. And then even better, if you can get outside other times during the day. You can kind of think of the sun as a super supplement. And as it changes throughout the day, it offers different benefits, the different light that it offers. And the more that we can get outside and to really sync our rhythm to circadian rhythm of nature really helps, especially in regulating our sleep-wake cycles. The other tip that I like to give in terms of routine is try to maintain a consistent bedtime and wake time every day as much as possible. It's called sleep regularity. Even on the weekends, if you can. You want to at least 80-85% of the time, and to not really deviate more than an hour or so. And that, our bodies love routine. And there's been some recent research that suggests that sleep regularity might even be a little bit more important than sleep duration or the number of hours we sleep a night. They're both critically important. But especially in terms of our long-term health, that consistent bedtime wake time might be just a little bit more important. And if you really struggle with sleep, if you pair those two things, the morning sunlight and the consistent bedtime wake time, within 2 to 3 weeks, you should absolutely feel a difference. Your sleep. Now, moving on to sleep story, or what's going on in our heads. And we have stories about just about every part of our lives, right? We tell ourselves, it's our self-talk. So about our relationships or our self-worth or, how well we do our job, any number of things. But we also have stories around our health and our sleep. So if you've ever said or heard somebody say, I'm a terrible sleeper, I always have been, it's just what it is, or I can never sleep more than 6 hours a night, my body just works that way, or I always wake up 3 to 4 times a night. Physiologically, our cells respond to our thoughts as though they're reality. So if you keep playing those stories over and over, then that's your reality. The good news is stories can be rewritten. So one way to try to do that is in those moments when you're lying in bed, drifting off to sleep, your subconscious is kind of vulnerable to rewiring or open to rewiring. So you can try repeating positive I am statements, either out loud or in your head. So something like, I am safe and comfortable in my bed, or I am an amazing sleeper who always sleeps 8 hours a night, or I am such a good sleeper that I sleep uninterrupted throughout the night. Something along those lines. And just repeat those as you're drifting off to sleep. And your subconscious kind of grab onto that and start to change the story in your reality around sleeping.
That's huge because one of the things I play with my clients is the language that they use. And with your example, like saying, I'm a horrible sleeper, I would be like, I invite you to put that in the past. I was a horrible sleeper because as of right now, in your presence, you haven't been a horrible sleeper yet. So it's now in your past, even if it was 5 minutes ago, right? So that I love playing with language. So I'm glad you
I
brought that.
like that. I like that. I might have to steal that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
do
that.
it. Yeah, or even like I know this isn't related, but some of my clients will be like, I'm struggling with XYZ. And I'll be like, I invite you to change the word struggling to I am experiencing these things. Because when we say
Mm,
struggle, it's an automatic negative thing that goes into our head, right? So if you're just saying,
yes.
I'm experiencing this, it's more like I'm laying out the data on the table. This is what I'm experiencing, but you're not struggling. So,
So good.
yeah.
So good.
Well, I'm gonna take let's go left, a hard left and ask you, this is a podcast of stories. It originated, it wasn't focused on health, and it was just people telling their story because I believe that when somebody shares their story, somebody else hearing it might like change their whole life. You know, one person is inspired, mission accomplished. So, do you have a story where you overcame something big or you had a huge um like mindset shift or something where you were just like, oh, I got it, and then your whole life changed?
Oh boy. So I was when I was diagnosed with my autoimmune disease, it was 17 years ago. So my daughter, who's 18, was about one. Um, and I didn't know what the heck was going on with me. So my whole head was so dry, it felt like it was just going to shrivel up.
Mm,
And my eyes felt like someone was rubbing on the sandpaper. I couldn't eat anything without drinking liquid right afterwards, or the food would get stuck at the top of my throat. Um, it was crazy. One time I went to the ER because I was having flashbacks of getting my wisdom teeth taken out. Both sides of my face completely swelled up. And they had
mm,
no idea what the heck was going on. So when I did finally get the diagnosis, it was a big relief. But then they followed up that with, well, it's an autoimmune disease, so it can never be cured, and it might progress, and you have to take this medication for forever. Um, so at that point, I was like, all right, this is not okay, and had a little self pity party,
mhm,
and but I had a full-time job, two toddlers at home, and so it was in my symptoms up to then where they were manageable. So it was just easier to, okay, I'm just going to take the medication and whatever, figure it out. I have other things to focus on.
mhm,
Um, and it was manageable. I mean, I definitely wasn't thriving. Um, then fast forward to to January 2020, and when I started studying to become a health coach, and had really just learned that health coaching even existed. And I thought, this is so cool. It's like this light at the end of the tunnel that I'm going to be able to help myself on my own health journey and then help other people. And a few months after I started studying, I was slicing an onion and cut my finger. It got completely infected, and I had to go on two separate courses of antibiotics. And after that, I started developing all these, like, I had body rashes and probably TMI, but I couldn't wear deodorant for a few weeks. This was non-toxic deodorant. Still
mm,
couldn't wear for a few weeks. And so, but there was no way I was going to go back to the doctor. I didn't want more antibiotics. I didn't want topical steroids. I just knew that traditional methods weren't going to help me. That's not what I wanted. So I did some research, had an idea of what was going on, and made some pretty drastic changes to diet and lifestyle. And within a week, my symptoms started to get better. Like my rashes started to disappear. And within 2 weeks, I was feeling great. My energy was even throughout the day. And it was crazy how it wasn't necessarily easy to make those changes, but they were pretty simple changes. And things that I probably like intuitively over the years knew maybe I should not do this and
Yeah.
but never really wanted to disrupt my lifestyle. Uh and so realizing the impact that those changes had um just opened up this whole new world. And I'm definitely much healthier than I had been. Um, Still working on some of my autoimmune stuff, but just the realization that we have control over our health.
Yeah.
And it takes work, but we can do it. And
Yeah.
of course, we got to put the plug. Sleep is, I think, where optimal health starts.
Yeah. I definitely put sleep in the center of all the other things, like sleep
Mm.
and then nutrition, movement. What else do I got? Connections, decluttering, de-stressing, all of the
Mm.
things. And it all starts
Mhm.
with sleep. And they are all interconnected. And it all starts with sleep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. And what I wanted to point out that stood out for me, just because this is my work, is your health changed because of behaviors, not
Mm.
because you were focused on a number on the scale.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
um, the people I work with are obsessed with that number. And I try to be like, you'll be fine if you throw your scale away and you focus on the behaviors.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate that you didn't even mention weight. That wasn't even a thing. So,
Yeah.
um, I do have one more question for you.
Mhm.
And I ask everyone at the end of every episode, and that is if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, if you haven't already, what would it be?
Um, so it would be to prioritize sleep and don't sacrifice it. It's, as I mentioned, it's an investment in every other area of your life, your business or job, your relationships, your mental health, your physical health. And it's a free investment.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a currency that should be traded.
Beautiful Beasts, Jennifer Patenaude signing off. Until next time. Palaka.